Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Monte Montepare. I grew up in Breckenridge, Colorado, and would like to welcome you to this Q&A, part of the Breck Film Festival 2020. We're here to talk with the director and one of the main subjects of Breathtaking, a film about K2. We've got Adrian Ballinger here talking with us, live from somewhere, just like all of the rest of you are. Thank you once again for joining us virtually. We know that the festival is a little different this year, but we want to thank all of our sponsors and volunteers and the board. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes, even when we're not in person. But I know a lot of you have been going to see this film. This film was at the drive-in, and you can still go see K2 Breathtaking. K2, if you haven't yet, at breckfilm.org, which is where you'd go to vote for it for best film. If that's where you're at, which I think it's a very worthy vote personally. Adrian, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here to chat about the film and K2, and I'm in Colorado as well. You're not quite in Breckenridge, but close by.
Yes, my heart is always in Breck, so Colorado vibes. This is, so you're one of the main subjects. You own a guide service, spend most of it seems like your connection to the Himalayas and the Karakoram is guiding on Everest. But this is a film about a personal climbing trip, a personal pursuit. What about filmmaking though? How did filmmaking come into the picture? What led to what?
Yeah, that's a great question. As the ice cream truck drives behind me here in downtown Rifle. I would, not call myself a filmmaker beyond the lucky opportunity to put Breathtaking together and be part of the team that made it happen. Essentially what happened is, Eddie Bauer supported me, Topo, and Carla to go on this expedition. And Carla and I were attempting to climb without supplemental oxygen. And we really wanted, a big part of my climbs for the past couple of decades has always been trying to share them with others in whatever storytelling way made sense, whether that's Snapchat or a blog or slideshows afterwards. And this time we decided to bring along Topo, Esteban Mena, who in his own right is this incredible 8,000 meter peak alpinist, but he was going to use oxygen while we were without oxygen so that he could film everything we were doing. He'd have so much more energy. And so he spent, 2 months running circles around us at high altitude on K2 and captured so much great footage. And the trip felt like such a special one that when we came home, we just really wanted to do something with all this material. We felt like the story was special, and so we just kind of dove in along with an editor at Eddie Bauer and some other friends, and just created this film together. But it might be my only directorial, headache. We'll see. You never know, but
it could be the debut and finale of an illustrious directorial career.
Exactly right. What I really focused on after we came home and as we built this film was like, how would I tell a story in a slideshow? Because that's what I've done for so many years. I just love giving slideshows to live audiences when it's possible. It isn't right now. And how would I do that and convert that into a short film? And with help of people who have a lot more experience than me, that's what we tried to do.
I think that you achieved that. There were definitely, watching it myself, I had a couple of those slideshow moments, I'll call them, where I could feel like myself gasp. I watched it by myself, but I was like, everybody would be gasping right now. This would be the moment where the air comes out of the whole room. I don't want to give everything away, but there are things that you never could have planned that take place during the film that definitely create quite a story arc that you encounter.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's really how the whole trip felt. I mean, I think kind of like you mentioned in your introduction, I've spent over, let's see now, 23 years going to the Himalaya in Nepal and Tibet, pretty much every single spring and fall in Nepal and Tibet, climbing in the big mountains there, including 13 seasons on Mount Everest. Some of those were personal climbs, like trying to climb Everest without supplemental oxygen. Some were guiding, but I felt very, very connected and familiar with the Nepal and Tibet Himalaya. But in that entire 25-year history of climbing big mountains, I had never been to Pakistan or the Karakoram. And K2 kind of sat out there as like this untouchable dream that I wasn't even sure I wanted to take on the risks that we all are probably so familiar with. It is a very dangerous mountain with over a 20% fatality rate still in today's day and age. And so it kind of just sat out there for a long time. And until until Carla and Topo, it was really their idea, and they approached me to see if I wanted to be Carla's partner because we had been doing a lot of guiding together and spent a lot of time in tents on big mountains together. That's when it finally felt like the team was right to go and make this attempt. And but I knew so little going in. Actually, I studied, of course, and planned a lot. We spent over almost 2 years planning the trip. But just like anytime you go and travel to a place you've never been before, things go wrong all the time. You misjudge things, and so it was just an adventure from beginning to end, which I hope comes through in the film.
There was a line in there, I think it just was slipped, that it was like, oh yeah, and this was Topo's trip to begin with. And I did have some questions about, wait, so Topo had this trip planned with all these guys with oxygen, they're gonna go do K2, and then you and Carla show up and are like, hey, is it cool if we do it also, but don't bring oxygen and come on the trip?
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but Topo had been to the Karakoram before. He knew K2. And I think, I hope I'm not giving anything away here for Topo, but, I think Topo really wants to put up a new route without oxygen on K2, which would be this mind-blowing kind of like generational accomplishment. And so last season with Caller and I was kind of an opportunity for him to scout the mountain, get to learn it a lot better, get to know those weather vibes, get to see the rockfall and the avalanches. And so he really wanted to be there. It was very much his, he was a big part of the planning, but he knew he didn't want to be without oxygen this season. And it was the perfect place for him to be supporting his partner, Carla, and me kind of suffering away.
He's like, hey, I'm going to go live on K2 this season.
Exactly.
You want to come with me?
Yeah, and it's just incredible. He's all three of us are mountain guides as well as being climbers. And so having Topo with a very clear head on oxygen, as well as in his filming role, for me, he really gave me confidence that he was helping to backstop me and Carla's decisions, because as you get to these really high altitudes, your desire becomes really strong at the same time that your intelligence gets really, really low and weak. And so it's very easy to make poor decisions up there. And I think that's part of why we see so much death in the high mountains still. And so having someone I really trust with that skill set on oxygen to help talk us through decisions, like, it was invaluable.
He also seemed like he is just a joy. He seems like he's
a lot of fun.
All day energy in the mountains, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And really both those guys are, Topo is a lot of fun and we guide a lot together. Carla is a little bit quieter, but she has this tenacity and persistence and kind of like depth of spirit that is just totally incredible. And every time I struggled on the mountain, Carla was just 100% there as my partner, kind of like knowing that it was going to be okay and willing to suffer more. And that's so important, right? We all have these dark times. I got pretty sick during the early part of the trip, and having another person there that's like, this suffering is worth it. We're going to get through it. There is going to be a light on the other side of this. That's what Carla brought to the team for me, and made really the perfect partner. We're definitely planning another one together.
I believe it. It seemed like a very cohesive team.
Yeah.
I guess it seemed like one of the larger the themes that really you talk about right off the bat in the film, I think, was a quote about that the big fear is you don't want something bad to happen in the mountains if you had this feeling that something, and you walked through that. And that's something that I've chewed with a lot, is that the difference between fear and that feeling, which I don't know exactly what that is. It's
Yeah.
a gut feeling, a bad vibe, just this isn't the time.
Yeah.
And it can be so difficult to decipher between that and we're scared, which, as Carla talked about during the film, you are scared up there. You're looking down thousands of feet for
Yep.
days at a time. You're kind of bathed in this fear.
Yes.
So I guess if you could talk about, it is really one of the themes of this film is like, when do you run? When do you bail? Like, what is that call?
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, they're almost impossible questions to take out of reality and like game out, because it's in the individual moment with the teammates where the decision of how much risk is appropriate and whether what we're feeling is fear or actual like danger that we're walking stupidly into, that like mix and balance is different every single time. What I know is, like, over 25 years in this career now as a climber and a guide, I've lost friends, as so many of us have, who live these mountain lives. And so I'm very conscious of that. And I have a lot of this guiding experience where we're very, very conservative. And so then I think in my personal climbing, I'm willing to take more risk, but I also want to be really cognizant of it and kind of identify and not be afraid to talk about it. And so, with this team, I think we had built a level of trust and open communication that we constantly were talking about those feelings and trying to identify what was just a feeling that maybe was a bit irrational, just from, like you said, from being around this intensity so much, and what was real, like, this is too much and we're not going to push through. And it's easy to sit here now, right, and say we made all the right decisions.
Yeah.
Maybe we got lucky too, and I think that's an important thing to acknowledge. But it worked out. Yeah, they're here.
Yay!
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. Looks like we got Topo and Carla. Yeah. Hi, I'm Monty.
Hey, guys. Sorry, we had a little confusion with the time zones.
Yeah.
Please excuse us for that.
Time zones are tough in the Americas. You guys, I was struggling here without you. It's so good to see your faces.
He threw you under the bus so many times. It was so bad. It's all recorded too. You can go back and watch it. It's gonna be tough on the next trip you do together, but you'll get through it. I think. I have belief. Yeah, we're talking about your amazing experience and amazing film that you had up there. Now that I have both of you, we got some questions. So Breckenridge, where this film festival happens, is at 9,000 feet, just above 3,000 meters. And someone's asking from Amy, what would you say is the difference between 9,000 feet and the top of K2? From an oxygen standpoint, maybe if you could give us an example of what there's.
All right, I've been talking a lot, so Carla.
Yeah, Carla, we saw you up there with the little paper Dixie cup on your face.
3,000 meters in the summit of K2 without O's. That would be like the difference between swimming in a pool and like swimming in the middle of the ocean with like no boat around you.
I think great white sharks chasing you.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that might, show a little bit of what you can do out there.
No, I think that's appropriate. I think that would be like someone that's like, no, I swim in a pool all the time. Drop me in the ocean would be like everyone in Breckenridge, like, I live at 9,000 feet. Let's do this K2 thing.
Yeah, or probably if you do the Tour de France with a bike or with a bike with electricity, something like
Yeah,
that.
with like a e-bike.
Ooh, I like that.
I like that. That's the only way I would do the Tour de France, Carla. So that speaks to me directly.
You know, that's one of the things about altitude, because oftentimes, you start thinking that it's just about like the physical aspect of breathing hard and struggling about the altitude itself, but there's like so much more. Like, you're normally really far away from civilization. There's like so many, complexities about the logistics, and then on top of that you have the physical aspect, and then you have like all this technical component of climbing. So yeah, it's
And the
like, and the
logistics.
logistics.
And
So
also a very important thing is how you know your body. You need a lot of experience learning about how your body works up there. That's a very important thing. I think you don't have to jump the steps. You have to do 19,000, 20,000, then 21, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's step by step, and then feeling how I feel, what is good for me to eat, how many milliliters I drink per hour, how I go to the bathroom, which layers I want to use, and
Yeah.
all these things are really important. All
yeah,
the logistics also.
And I think that's something like we talk about so much as both mountain guides and climbers. And like, to Amy's question, like none of us want to say like climbing K2 without oxygen is impossible or we're superheroes. We're not. It takes those steps. So if you've been to 9 in Breckenridge, and next you climb 14,000 for peaks in Colorado, and if those go well, then maybe you go and check out Denali or go to Ecuador where these guys are from and climb some 20,000 for peaks. And like it's just like Carla said, those building blocks, and then something like K2 could come into reach if that's a passion you have.
yeah, totally.
I want to shoot a thank you out from the executive director of the Film Fest who was listening in, Janice, and loved your analogies about oxygen. Both of them. They were very insightful. I have a question coming in, and it's kind of the big. Everybody knows about Everest. Everybody hears about Everest. Everybody knows all the Everest stories. Unless you're a climber, few people know about K2. And the question is kind of what is the differences from those two scenes, I'm going to call them. And then I even want to dive a little deeper because I feel like you experienced almost like a growing pain season at K2 when the camp exploded bigger than it ever had. And there's a scene of you, Topo, expanding ledges that feels really otherworldly and is such like these guys are mountain guides moment. But I guess in that framework, if you could talk about like, what is the difference between the Everest and K2 experience?
Whoa, you guys are upside down. You're like on the moon right now.
You're in Ecuador.
Oh, I don't know what is happening.
Still upside.
What
You're
happened
still
with
upside
our
down.
camera?
You're still upside down.
Yeah, now we're good.
You're back.
Your question just turned us upside down.
Well,
yeah. I know it's a big question.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to start?
For me, I think that to make it short, K2 is more dangerous for sure. It's more technical, but physically I was more tired on Everest without oxygen. I don't know, it's just this 200 meter more, 200, right? Yeah, 200 meter more on Everest that makes me feel super, super, super tired. On K2, I was tired. It was really exhausting, but I felt better. In my mind, it was more clear. I was making more decisions by myself and taking everything in my hands. On Everest, I was at the end. On Everest, I was just following Toppo, really tired. I think it's different. but K2, you feel all the time the danger that an avalanche can come, or a rock fall, or it's super steep, and yeah, it's different for me.
Yeah, I guess you know, maybe you guys, I'm sure you have Adrian, but after times of going back to certain mountains, and you know, after enough climbing, you start feeling that some mountains have, like, you know, personalities, right? Like, there are mountains that are like super friendly, and some mountains are like, you know, inviting, and no matter what, things will go right. And K2 is a mountain that, yeah, I mean, just like the you know, the name of the film is savage, and it's not bad. You know, the mountain is not trying to kill you, but you feel this sort of like tension in the air, and you know, the mountain has experienced some commercialization, which brings extra problems, like, you know, more people than you would like, and especially more people taking bad decisions, you know,
Mm.
and more people doing things that, you know, you start wondering yourself, like, asking yourself, like, why these people came? They are probably just following like this tick mark list, you know. But it, even if it wasn't for, like, you know, that kind of problem, it's still like K2 is just wild savage mountain that you just feel the tension in the air. Like, you go from camp to camp and there is always something. It's like rock climbing, you know, one of those beaches that every quick draw is like a crux, you know. It's like, just getting to each camp, you finish the day and you think to
I'm
yourself,
alive.
like, "Whew, we are alive," you know.
Even the footage of the camps from K2 doesn't seem like you're ever really anywhere. You know, you're not like, oh, we made it to
Yeah.
the huge ridge or the place. It's like, oh, we're on the side.
Not in, not, it's really true. You walk out of base camp and you walk on a flat glacier for like 40 minutes. Like, literally, that's the only like snow walking on the entire mountain, it feels like. Then you're just straight up through all the camps until Camp 4. And Camp 4 at, what was the height of Camp 4?
Come for at 7,900.
7.9. That's the next time you're kind of on a flat spot and you feel comfortable being completely unroped. And that is like a remarkable feeling on a mountain. And even there, you can't really feel like, oh, it's a very safe place, because you still have, I mean, Camp 4 does get wiped out some seasons by massive avalanches from above. So there just is no safe place. Whereas I would say the camps on Everest on the north side, where the three of us climbing guide now, pretty much every camp is safe from
It's very
rockfall
safe,
and
yeah.
icefall. There might be occasional locations while you're climbing where you have avalanche risk, of course, or rockfall risk, but the camps all feel safe. So you crawl into a tent on Everest and you can just stop and breathe and feel quote unquote safe, except for elevation, altitude. And on K2, there wasn't a single camper I felt that way.
And that's like, I gotta ask this question as a climbing historian of any following, and that you know, the theme that we were talking about early in Adrian, this question about when do you go, how are you judging risk, and Carla, you talked about like, there's just, it takes time. You have to put yourself in these situations and feel it over and over again. But I know it was hard for me to breathe just watching you under that bottleneck, Serac. And there's only one shot in it, and it is that like slideshow moment where the whole room would gasp, because if you've ever been in a big mountain and know that moment where you're like, we are now exposed until we get to this place, and we're exposed from a place so far above us, and we've already made these choices. I don't know. I feel like that place is probably the most famous place in mountaineering, where you have to have some kind of mental dissonance or put it away and move forward. It is kind of like the refined version of that. Talk about that moment that morning for you.
For me, it was really interesting because I think Carla and my experience might have been quite different. But I won't speak for Carla, I'll just speak for myself. So for me, like I said earlier before these guys came on, I'd been waiting 20 years to go to K2. I was never sure that risk was worth it. I decided this year, because of the team being Carla and Topo and me, that the risk was worth it this year. And I went to the mountain, and I thought I'd get there and just be like, I've made this decision. I'm clear cut. I know the bottleneck is really dangerous. I lost really good friends there in 2008, but I'm just going to put it away and go because I made this decision. And then I got onto the bottleneck, and it wasn't like Everest without oxygen. Kind of like Carla said, on Everest without oxygen, I was kind of like half blacked out on summit day. I didn't have many brain cells working. On K2, I was really clear headed. And then it took us something like 6 hours below the bottleneck. And it was like 6 hours where all I thought about was like how stupid this is in some ways. And I wasn't able to just put it away. And I think that's why it was such a like cathartic emotional moment for me when I got around it. And I kind of like selfied myself, you know, crying like the little baby that I am. And so that was my experience.
I was right there with you.
Actually, I never was able to fully put that away.
Yeah. For my side, it's quite different. It takes me a lot of time to take the decision to do it or to go. I'm a scary person, so I always have doubt and fears about the consequences or myself, if I am able to do that and all that. But once I decide to go in something like the bottleneck, I go and I trust. But I really trust that everything will be okay, and I'm not afraid anymore. I just don't know. I don't know how to explain that, but I understand somehow that one day I'm gonna die for sure, like every human being. And in this moment, I just trust in something like God or the universe, on the nature, on the mountain. I trust that if today is my day, it will be. If it not, it will not be, and just go for it and just try to feel free. And you know, like, I don't know, it takes me time to decide, but when I am there, I just feel like connect something.
And before you guys came onto the call, Carla, that was one of the things I said, like that quiet strength and certainty that you have was like incredibly powerful for me. You know, and each time I had doubts, knowing that you felt that way, like that's part of what makes you a great partner.
Yeah. And you, Topo?
I guess I'm kind of in the same page, guys. Like it's quite different, and it's interesting because when you are like filming, you know, your friends doing these things, at least for me, my experience, you know, filming Carla or Adrian in Everest, or now both of them in K2, you sort of get super focused on what's happening in front of the camera. So you don't think that much on what's happening around, right? So for me, like a bunch of those moments was just looking at the camera and like trying to, you know, feel and be with them and like just be in the moment, like shooting as much as I could. But I was not thinking on you know, how dangerous is the mountain, because just like Carla said, we spend a lot of time before thinking on you know, how it will feel and how it would be, and we read a lot of the news and the history and all the accidents, and we sort of want to know all the bad things that happened before. So then we sort of accept those, you know, and you make peace with those possibilities, and you go hoping that, just with faith, you know, like this sort of like blind faith that will not happen to you.
Thank you for sharing that. All resonates with me personally, and I think it is a looping back, it is a hard thing to describe to anybody. About it goes back, like, why do you go to the mountains? How do you make these decisions? And this film really rests on that. It keeps coming up over and over again. You're challenged. There's openings to go home. I got a couple other questions coming out here. What was the first thing that each of you did to celebrate when you got home from this particular adventure? If you did go home, or if you just got on an airplane and went climbing more. That counts too.
Well, even before we went home, it's kind of a long process to get to and from Pakistan. And so one of the really funny things I remember is we finished the expedition. We got out through Skardu and then Islamabad, and me, calling Topo, the easiest way to fly home to the United States was through Istanbul in Turkey, which is kind of a famous town, of course, for food and luxury and parties and clubs and all these things. And we had been in the mountains for 2 months in a dry country. And so like, I remember we talked for like 3 days getting there, like about how we were just going to rage and we're going to have this great time. We're going to celebrate and let loose. And we got to Istanbul. And I think every single night we were in bed by like 7 p.m. sleeping for 14 hours.
Super tired.
So that's what I remember. We slept.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think one of the best thing to do is just the first dinner with all the team. You know, when you are in the first town and you know that you are alive and everyone is good and with health, and you take this dinner. Doesn't matter if it's a big place or not, but you know, just share the meal and talk about the expedition and the experience. That's a good thing that I love to do. Another thing is when I arrive home in Quito at Ecuador, and I just jump in the bed and with my arms and you know, everything open like a star, and just stay there like feeling how was everything, the experience. I don't know, it's just this feeling to everything was okay.
Yeah. For me, one constant celebration is the first time I go rock climbing back at home, and it's sunny, and it's like, I have still
You're
all
not
my fingers,
scared.
like my fingers complete, like feet complete. You know, I'm healthy enough to go rock climbing, and everything is like sunny and warm, and maybe go drink a beer afterwards. That's always like, you know, it's all good. But for sure, maybe that dinner in Istanbul was like,
Well, yeah,
the first moment of,
first in with Pemba and
yeah,
Garden, yeah.
or in yep,
Yeah.
realizing that we actually survived.
And then to see the family, you know, my parents, my brother and sister, my grandma, all see them and give them a big hug. That's something that I love when I come back home, for sure.
I wanna follow that up, Carla. There's in the film you talk about you know, the difference of being on an expedition, you know, like climbing. I think when you say climbing, most people think of what you just described, Topo, right? Going to the crag, they go climbing, oh, that was extreme, and then you drink a beer. But these expeditions are slow, and you talk about it, and during it is these shots looking down the steep fixed lines and looking over the edge of camp. And I guess maybe if you could talk about how that, or like, what is the difference? How is that experience harder or different mentally to go through that long expedition mentality?
Yeah, well, I think you have to be in peace with yourself somehow. You know, because you have a lot of time to think about everything in your life, or about yourself, about your fears and doubts in life or in the mountains. So you have a lot of time to stress, because when you have the time to think, then you can start to stress really easy, and you have to show your bad side, let's say, to everyone, because you are scared and you are tired, and you sleep very high. And when you sleep very high, even in base camp is high, so you sleep there, you don't have very, very good nights, because you are high and your body is not has a recuperation. So then you feel like tired, and you eat we have food, but it's not the best food. It's not a lot of vegetables or very good food. So you have food, but it's not the best one, and your body just start to be tired, and your mind too. So I think his experience, more than the climbing itself or the high altitude without oxygen, is a lot about to dominate your mind, you know, to try to to stay calm and to try to dominate is the word. Is that
To understand
to
yourself better.
understand yourself better for sure, and then you be the owner of your mind, not let your mind just explode. You have to honor somehow your mind, and it helps with your body, your tired body, and this is the most difficult thing, not only in the expeditions. I think in life is very easy to just lost, to lose the conscious, I don't know, just lost and said, I hate everyone, everything is bad, and everything is the worst, and I hate that. So it's good when you just try to control that, and that's the hardest thing for me in the big expedition with a lot of time.
Man, oh my goodness. You have to own your mind. I wrote that down. I love that, Carla. I think that's
this is my
and I can't help but think about, and this is what when this global pandemic we're all experiencing happened. I was in Los Angeles, is where I live half of the year. I run a guide service in Alaska the other half of the year, and we were talking, Adrian and I, earlier, how I didn't go to Alaska this year, and I've been here. But for me, I went into expedition mode. I could feel it in my body, like, oh, I'm restrained. I can't go wherever I want to go. I have to buy food for a long amount of time. And I think that it was, and I heard from people who are not climbers or not expedition goers, that experience, that for maybe the first times in a lot of people's lives, they felt like they were having an expedition experience in real life. And there's a question here in the chat about how the pandemic is affecting your work this year, each of you, and maybe also if you could talk a little bit about how your experiences in the mountains have helped or informed you dealing with the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's great.
Yeah. I'll jump in first. I mean, I think exactly what both you and Monty and Carla were talking about. It does help us as mountain guides or expedition climbers to kind of, in some ways, get through the pandemic time. I also think it's, of course, important to recognize like that we are some of the fortunate ones in that we could kind of hole up and be like, able to, get through day by day and worry about all like psychological effects of COVID on us versus maybe the reality of like not being able to like make money to eat day to day. So from a very lucky place, I can sit here and say like, yes, it felt like, it does feel a lot like an expedition, like how many things are unknown and uncontrollable outside of our sphere. That's what we deal with in the big mountains all the time. And so as we settled into COVID life, I saw so many people having so much anxiety about all the unknowns of this. And kind of to what Carla said, I feel like we're quite used to having to manage that anxiety and be okay with the fact that we don't have all the information. We don't know what's going to happen. We just have to keep taking these little steps forward. And so that's kind of like been my experience of the past few months. From a like work and business side, I own a guide company called Alpenglow Expeditions, and we're based out of Lake Tahoe, California, but we guide all over the world. And last year in 2019, we guided 31 international expeditions, and this year we had guided 8 and then got shut down for the rest of the season. So we haven't guided an international trip since March, and that's been brutal. Both, of course, the financial scary side, and also like I love guiding. I love being in big mountains with people who are pushing themselves to their limits and being a part of those experiences. And not having had that for 9 months now or 8 months it's pretty crummy. Luckily, we are guiding again in California, and so that has, I get a little taste of that, even though it's only day guiding, not expedition guiding. We've been doing Via Ferrata and rock climbing and things like that, and so still been able to do that. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, from like just as a human being, of course, this past 4 months has showed us, I would speak for me, has showed me like some of the hardest moments that I ever experienced out of a mountain, like just thinking on all these difficulties that friends and sometimes family or just acquaintances and you read the news. So for sure it has taken awareness of my awareness of life to like a whole new level of thinking about things that I just didn't think before, right? But yeah, as a mountain guide, it's been really hard. Like it's pretty evident we haven't been going out to the mountains. I have to say that I can feel just like I just feel fortunate to have the support of Eddie Bauer, and this has been the only possible way for us to maintain these dreams, climbing and just staying doing what we love. Yeah.
For my side, I work like a motivational speaker, so that's a good thing that now the companies can do that by Zoom online. So
Lots of Zooms.
So I can continue doing that, all these motivational speeches, and then yeah, that helped me with the work. But for myself, of course, like for everyone, all these months were super hard, but somehow I feel like it showed me how fortunate I am to have a place to live and food to eat, because I don't know in the States, but in Ecuador, we saw a lot of cases of people that with this situation, they didn't have a place to live. They just, they were without a work because a lot of people work for the day. They work one day and they win the money, and with this money that they want,
have to work the next day and so
have to work the next day and eat with the money every day. So it was pretty hard, and to see that, something that makes me think about what I am also doing with the society, if I am helping some, so with I don't know, with a project or something. So it makes me think a lot about my contribution with the society, with the Ecuador, with everywhere, with the people, how I can help, and not only doing motivational speakers. I mean something really practical, right? Yeah.
I would like to go to a motivational speech by you, Carla. I think, and I encourage you to broaden your reach in the world, but I wouldn't undersell the change that you're making with these motivational speeches. Pretty much everything you said in that movie hit me pretty hard, and you landed some gems this evening too. I think your words.
Thank you.
We got a couple questions in here about Eddie Bauer. You brought Eddie Bauer up. What is the with the sponsorship? And speaking of Eddie Bauer, everybody should go to the Breck Film Fest online. That's breckfilmfest.org, and there's an auction there where we have an Eddie Bauer backpack signed by Adrian, and I think it looks like one of those packs. You're gonna watch this movie, you're gonna be like, hey, I want that pack. That's the pack.
Yep,
and you could get this pack. So go to breckfilmfest.org. But speaking of Eddie Bauer, how does the Eddie Bauer sponsorship work? Is it exclusive? Are you guys able to play with other brands? How's this work?
Yeah, so we're all really fortunate to be on the Eddie Bauer guide and athlete team. And when you're on a team like that, like they're multi-year contracts and they're exclusive contracts for the kind of things they make, so apparel and tents and sleeping bags and things like that. And it's my favorite job in the world, along with guiding. I kind of have two jobs, I guess, and like just getting to be a part of designing equipment for the harshest environments on the planet that then carry over into the mainstream. I love that. The Eddie Bauer team is so passionate about what they make and has so much pride. So it's really a fun part of my day-to-day and job. It doesn't mean you can't have other sponsors in other areas. So I have a footwear sponsor, something like that, or a food sponsor, or a life insurance sponsor, but not another clothing sponsor.
Well, it's interesting, Monte, because at some point when it's this gift of having the chance of having the opportunity to be supported by a big company, and like to supported by someone or by a group of people that's so passionate about climbing, goes beyond just the business component of like, I want to go play with like this other brand and this other brand. And you get to know people who are, just good people. And eventually
Mhm.
this team, or this like, yeah, this community becomes a substantial part of your life. Like, Adrian and the other team members and the team manager and everybody who's around is passionate about the jackets and the pants and like the new piece of gear that they're doing. And you just, this quote unquote work becomes just an extension of your passion. Like, yeah, let's make a better jacket, or let's think about a way to improve this other one. So
Yeah.
it's very exciting
and
for me.
and,
Yeah.
and the philosophy of the company, I think a very important thing, if you work with a sponsorship, is to have the same ideology with the company. You don't just take that because it will help me. You take that because you feel that you can represent them and they represent you. So that's something super, super amazing with Eddie Bauer, that I think they have an amazing philosophy as a company.
Yeah, the first ascent line has pretty deep roots in us.
And they're coming out. I heard next year they're coming out with Eddie Bauer rice bags. Is that right, Topo? They got rice
Yeah,
bags coming.
you guys should wait for those. We're still waiting so we can go test again.
Okay.
We still need some more testing
They're
again in the
still doing
California, but
R&D on the ledge expanding rice bags. Give them a
it's gonna
season or
be
two.
it's gonna be ultra light and like multi-use. So you guys wait.
I think that this concludes our time together. I'm so honored to get to speak with you all in person. I really enjoyed the adventure of your film and going on that journey with you. Thank you to everybody who joined us out there in the world. Go to Breck
Yeah,
Film
thank
Fest.
you.
Yeah, I'll give you a second to thank everyone.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
sure.
much.
Thanks for
Join
watching
us
the film.
tonight.
If you haven't yet, check it out. And thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, it's so fun. It's been over a year now since we've been on this trip, and especially the year without a lot of expeditions. This one is so special. So it's fun to get to talk about it for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, thanks for everybody, and please just go, be safe, and have fun.
Thank you for joining us.
All
And
right,
now
Steve
we can.
Breckenridge, we love you.
Bye.
Bye.